Boy, that's a bunch of ginseng sitting there.
Over $100 worth.
Every bit over $100 worth. That's a couple of $100 worth. Judging by what? It's $10 an ounce now?
Yeah.
How many? Run your hand back down in that pile of ginseng there. Put your hand back. There you go. Back down in there to give me a perspective. There's I bet there's $200 worth laying there. At $10 an ounce.
Yeah.
How long?
The plants that they use would be plants like in Wilkes County. We can still find Queen of the Meadow, which is used for diabetes and kidney problems. We find Marlyn, which was used for the lungs. We find Oswego, which is a member of the mint family, which is actually named after the Oswego Indians, and that would be for digestive aids. We have ginseng, which grows further down in the woods, and they call it kind of the elusive plant. In fact, you can be standing on it and not really see it. They would have used that for health issues as well. Dandelion, which grows in everybody's yard, is wonderful, but to put the natural salts back into one's body, which aids in high blood pressure. To give you another example, growing in our yards is chickweed. Everyone complains of rheumatism and arthritis, and that's one of the most wonderful herbs, and it's an edible herb. You can throw it on your tall salad, and it helps with arthritis and makes your joints flexible and your movement more fluid. They not only use the local plants, in which I learned from the Lumbee, a medicine man would have a particular person that, let's say, that is sick in mind, and they didn't go just pick any plant. They let their spirit guide, or their what we would call guardian angel, lead them to the perfect plant. And they may have to walk for miles in order to find this plant. But when they did, they knew the plant, because the plant kind of illuminated with energy. And if you've never been out and watched plants, you wouldn't know what I'm speaking of. But if you work in flower gardens, or you're a gardener growing vegetable gardens, maybe you go out one day and your plant just looks so vibrant, and it's almost just like it has a halo around it. Or maybe the leaves are moving and there's no wind, no breeze. This was an indicator this was the perfect plant to be harvested. And they would pray over the plant, and they would ask, let's say if there was 10 mullein plants, they recognized one as being the grandmother plant or the grandfather plant, which means it was older and it was wiser. And they would pray and ask this plant to direct them as to how much they were to harvest. And maybe they would only take 2 or 3 plants, and they would take it back. And when they did dig up the plant or harvest off of the plant, they always offered something back. And they would use tobacco or corn or maybe a red bead. They associated red with healing.
Flint knapping and stone tool technology is making stone tools, not only knives and arrowheads. Native Americans made scrapers out of stone. Everything that they used to cut with was made out of stone before steel come along. Scrapers, they use hide scrapers, which was a sharp-edged stone they used for scraping. They made saws, drills. This is a thumb drill. They also made spindle drills that they could put in a shaft and spin with their hand, or they use them with a bow spindle. They drilled wood, drilled stone. A lot of their pipe making, they had to have a drill to drill the stems, put pipe stems in.
The first people were those who called themselves in their own language the Nayar, the real people, the Catawba Indians. These Catawba Indians, of course, were later chased out by the Cherokees.
The Yadkin River in this particular section of the country served really as a sort of informal boundary between the Cherokee and the Catawba. Both of them came through here. They came through here to hunt. They came through here to for their summer camps, which is to say that they had settlements along here, but they were temporary settlements. They would be, their permanent towns would be further away from the border where they would be more protected. But because this was a very fertile river valley, they would come here long enough to plant corn, to grow a whole crop of corn and harvest it. So this was not a weekend campground, but it was a temporary seasonal campground. And of course they would also hunt and fish through here. I think I should add maybe here that at this time the Yadkin River was called the Saponi River, which was the name, or Sapona, sometimes ending in an A, which was the name of another Indian tribe, a member of the Catawba group, further down the river.
As the white man pressed the Cherokee out of the North Carolina mountains, it caused conflict between them and the Catawba over land they each thought was rightfully theirs. Legend has it, in the spring of 1737, both tribes fought for over a week at a location 4 miles north of what is now Lenoir. The battle was so great and so many died, they decided to erect a symbol of peace just off the present Highway 321.
And they interlaced 2 poplar trees together as a sign of peace between them. They didn't fight anymore.
The 2 tribes declared that peace would exist as long as the tree lived. Today, the tree stands at over 100 feet in height.
Who was the first white man to come to Wilkes County? His name was Christopher Gist, G-I-S-T. Christopher Gist had 3 sons, actually, and one of the sons was Nathaniel Gist. Nathaniel married the sister of 2 of the Cherokee Indian chiefs. This sister was named Warte. It was the name that she went by. And the sisters, brothers, were Chief Old Tassel and Chief Doublehead. And Nathaniel and Warte Gist were the parents of a son, which would actually have been a half-breed son at that time, by the name of Sequoyah. And Sequoyah was a genius.
He was the only guy in history that actually developed a phonetic alphabet in and of and by himself.
There are 85 syllables, and he done this himself. We have the only Native American written language.
He became one of the outstanding members of the Cherokee tribe. In fact, he was so well known and so famous that the Sequoia National Forest in California was named after him later on because of what he contributed to the Cherokee people.
By October 1757, the Cherokee were on the move. Along the frontier, settlers began to hear stories about bands of Indians attacking, killing, scalping, and burning. Some whites went east and stayed until the frontier settled down once more. One such family was that of Daniel Boone. He moved his wife and children to Culpeper, Virginia, in the belief that the Yadkin was by no means wide enough to stop the Cherokee. It wasn't.
These people, they were here for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, one of them ran Daniel Boone in a doggone cave somewhere down on the other side of the Yadkin River. And like got him. They had a back entrance to the cave. They call it Boone's Cave nowadays.
Kensington Heights is a hill in North Wilkesboro. It eventually became the site of the first house in North Wilkesboro, and today where the North Wilkesboro post office stands. Before that, it was the site of a fort where white settlers retreated when threatened by Indian attacks.
According to John Costa, who is an Indian expert, a good friend of Ed Finley and Kathleen Morehouse here, who has studied the Indians all over the country, and there's quite a bit about the Indians of the Southeast. The Yadkin River, in this particular section of the country, served really as a sort of informal boundary between the Cherokee and the Catawba.
Relationships between Native Americans and Africans weren't always positive, but when they met Africans out west during the Civil War, they found a strange connection to them.
Now, while serving on the western frontier, they came in contact with the Plains Indian. The Indian had never seen a black soldier before, but the black soldier reminded the Plains Indian of the buffalo. They looked at the mane of the buffalo, and it kind of reminded them of the hair of the black trooper. When he looked at the skin of the buffalo, it kind of reminded him of the skin of the black trooper. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it was the tenacity in which this buffalo fought. When this buffalo was backed in a corner, he would fight ferociously to get out. And the Indians saw that in the black trooper. Now, understanding that the Indian respected the buffalo, he used the hide for warmth. He used the hide to build tents. They ate the meat. They used the buffalo to work the fields. Well, the black trooper understood this and took honor in the name Buffalo Soldier. Thus, they were given the name Buffalo Soldier.
One man that was mentioned quite often was a person by the name of Benjamin Cleveland.
Cleveland was a colonel in the Revolutionary War and played a large part in the victory at the Battle of Kings Mountain. Before that, though, he served as captain on several tours of duty against the aggressions of the Cherokee in western North Carolina.
Benjamin Cleveland was an unusual individual. First of all, he was a big man. At one time, he weighed well over 400 pounds. He was not that tall, but as a result of his size, we're told that the Cherokee Indians avoided him in any way that they possibly could.
He came to Wilkes County from Virginia around 1769 and lived most of his life here. He was one of the first squires in Wilkes County, along with John Brown. As a matter of fact, the first court was held at the home of John Brown, located on a bend of the Yadkin River on the 2nd day of March, 1778.
And Wilkes County itself was actually established as a county on February 12, 1778.